girls. Hey girl, hey. How y'all doing? I really was not in the greatest place. I was in a slump. Knew that I now wanted my podcast to be actually taken seriously. And girl, I know you're like, girl, you have 2 episodes out. And this is the second one. The first episode was just kind of like on a whim of recording. I didn't even own a mic. I used my cousin's mic. Now I own a mic. Now I'm recording. Now I have like a stand. I just felt like I needed this to be perfect, and that's why I struggled with like the first episode so much as well. I'm thinking too hard. I mean, even when I sat down like this is the second time I sat down to record this, and I'm already thinking about like all my little icks to myself. Funny enough, like a lot of my life right now is actually falling very into place, a little more than it was when it was very uncertain, and I felt empty. I felt like it still wasn't right in a sense, and sitting down to think about what the next topic was really hard for me because the first topic flew like a flu for me. And I was just really sitting here thinking, saying like, what were the last times I felt like this? And I realized it was when I had a lot of self-pity. And I feel like self-pity is a very, very difficult topic because it encompasses a lot of things, and it was really hard for me to actually like pin it down to the word self-pity or specifically self-pity. You have envy, complex emotions, control issues, jealousy, feeling self-hate, and those all can be different episodes, but specifically I kind of want to focus on self-pity today. So my big statement of the day is my thesis, scientific. Self-pity is your obstacle to being happy. Self-pity is the reason why you're unhappy, not because of the obstacles. Okay, so hi, I'm Jamila. Welcome to Hardship with Ease. Just talk about the struggles I'm going through currently and physically, mentally, all of this from a perspective that I don't see really being represented as being Black, second gen, Muslim, educated, and really not thinking I'm an expert towards these things, but more of I've been through it and I want people to hear my perspective because I had to hear like 10 different perspectives to come to my own perspective because it just wasn't out there. And I really wish when I was going through some of these things that I at least had some of this direction. And I have heard from a lot of people I've talked to in this past couple of days, months, that like, oh, you give great advice. And I'm like, okay, you know what, y'all? I'm gonna sit down, record, and yap. Okay. So let's get into the topic for real. So I'm not going to validate that life isn't hard. Life is hard, okay? We have so much going on, and it's so annoying to pretend that like it's super positive to be sitting through the bullshit. I'm like a very strong hater of this whole, let's be positive. Oh my God, your whole world is falling apart and everything is going crazy. Well, be happy and things like that. I'm a negative person. I know when I was younger and I tried to push through with this like fake happiness, I became really numb, which might be another episode. And I'm going to keep being like, oh, that's a good episode because, I'm trying to think out episodes ahead of plan. So whether it's a job change, a relationship, a death, somewhere, even if you're not in the place you want to be in life, right? It's frustrating. Being sad is part of this, especially if you didn't choose that change. When you see everyone doing better than you, understanding like respectfully, we don't know people's lives. You can be envious, you can hate your life, and sometimes all of that can turn into self-pity. I have had a lot of self-pity moments, and I feel like a lot of people do, but we don't really talk about this idea of self-pity. So let's start off with like what's the definition of self-pity. So I actually want to talk from, as I like to call, the self-betterment kind of energy of looking at websites like BetterHelp. And they have an article called Breaking the Cycle of Self-Pity, a guide to controlling your life. And they define self-pity as a negative emotion recognizing helplessness, sadness, and the sense of injustice about your life circumstance. Okay. They also have some more stuff like written under. I'm going to read verbatim for y'all. It often entails dwelling on past hardships or current difficulties and feeling remorse for yourself or your situation. It is normal to feel sad or upset about life changes occasionally, but these emotions can become problematic when they turn into a persistent pattern of thinking and interferes with your ability to live a satisfying life. AKA, your life is hard and you mentally are taking that burden, which is kind of crazy to say. That's kind of the self-help, self-betterment definition, but like, what does research say? So I will preference, this article was so interesting for me. I didn't think, when I was searching through these different topics of like envy or maybe jealousy, I found this article specifically and I was like, this is my topic. It starts off with like what pity is, which is the feeling of deep sympathy or sorrow for someone who's suffering an unhappy moment or life. Self-pity, however, is the same feeling but just directed towards yourself. So feeling sorry for yourself because of your own physical or emotional pain or your unhappiness. So feeling sorry that you're going through bad things. And I think that's a great definition to describe self-pity. And so they take a very, very old research article from like the 1960s and 70s, and they worked with chronic pain, chronic illness, and asked these individuals going through these things what they think self-pity comes with. And they're like sadness, loss, a sense of unfairness, even feeling envious towards those who haven't finished these hardships or went through these hardships, kind of being like, why me? Why not them? And that's all part of self-pity. So it's that envy, that questioning of why am I going through it, as well as feeling sad about the fact that you're going through hardship or unhappiness. And so self-pity isn't just limited to people with chronic illness. It's experienced because maybe you missed out on a promotion or something minor, like being ignored, even though I'll say being ignored is not a minor feeling. This article, which was pretty recent, was talking about this is not really focused on. So they're trying to kind of look at now, what are the articles talking about self-pity? What are we saying? Once again, all the articles they're quoting are from the 60s and 80s. And it's really funny because this is such a recent article. The idea of self-pity is really trying to drive towards attracting empathy. And that's from 1965. Like, peep that self-pity, like the next step is really trying to attract people feeling sorry for you or empathy or whatever. And respectfully, that strategy is doomed to fail because it doesn't really actually make people self-pity you. It actually makes people want to reject you. And these, once again, research from the 70s and 60s and 80s talking about people will leave you because of your self-pity. And the whole point of self-pity is to make people care and have intention towards you. And so it talks about those individuals with chronic illnesses, and like the longer they kind of build that environment of self-pity, the more people leave because people accept everything and they expect you to accept everything. Also, people who feel self-pity, they find, is like you're permanently frustrated with life. It has two consequences of like that, frustration. Either you socially withdraw or you have like strong feelings of loneliness. And then they also could lead like to anger, hostility. And that's some of the articles in the 60s and 70s and 80s found. It's really interesting because it also says like this hostility that you're growing kind of plays completely against what you want, which is that I want people to care about me and feel about me. Funny thing is they found that most people who have self-pity actually can't be direct with their anger. Instead, they kind of like ruminate on it and they're like, I'm mad, but I can't really do anything, so I'm just going to be low-key a little petty. Like it continues to exist in them and it kind of just gives them feeling that the world is against them. And I think it's so crazy that like we have research who really put that out there a long time ago and we don't talk about this, that like self-pity will literally take you from feeling bad about yourself and expecting everyone to focus on you to being a bit angry because no one wants to focus on your problems. Not bit, a lot of anger, and then being like very under discreet or like, being petty because people don't care about you. And then it's like, okay, you're going to be frustrated for the rest of your life. We as a culture already know that. And it's so funny because we're like, anytime we hear somebody talking about their problems, we're already like sick of it because we, or at least from my friend groups and like even me, like you pick up and you know the signs of self-pity. You don't know it's self-pity per se, but you're like, oh my God, that's that girl that just be crying about her life, right? And she don't want no help. She don't want to fix her life. She just want everybody to listen to her problems. this article told you, like, you turn into a monster the longer you sit in self-pity, and it becomes a cycle. When I was kind of reading it, I was like, okay, like, I think people should take accountability on their self-pity because, like, of the definition of what self-pity was. But it really ate with, like, breaking down, yes, self-pity comes from the place, and it sounds very innocent, of, like, I want people to care about me, and it's really feeling pity for myself because of my hardships. But it's like, okay, but if you feel pity for yourself, you will end up looking crazy because you expect everyone to give you that validation. The article itself, like, that was the beginning, and usually research articles, if you don't know, they kind of do, like, what does the literature look like, and then let me tell you what I'm gonna say to back up the literature. They themselves are like, let's look at self-pity and personality traits, and they really found that people who have self-pity tend to be very depressed. I can tell you that's true because that's where this entire topic came from, because I was in a slump and I was like, ooh, it's because I be self-pitying. That whole idea of people who have self-pity are prone to emotional loneliness or, like, worrisome attachments. Funny enough, they found that women were more likely to self-report pity compared to men when it comes to stressful situations. I also want to think about it in broader terms of the world. If we think about, like, incels and so many different groups, like incels, I'm sorry, that's, like, the first thing that came to my mind. A lot of them are created, they literally live in a cycle of pity, even if they don't call it that. And there's a lot of people like that it's constantly like, it's the world, not me. Hence, woe is me as the title. I want to reel it back into individuals because this podcast is about me talking about research and then tying it to my life and how I live. I think it's just telling us straight up, like, you're going to be a lonely, bitter person if you live in self-pity, and it can lead long term to bad relationships and depression. I also want to bring up Islamic perspective. So one interesting thing that I think about when I think about Islamically is the qadar. Everything that is meant for you is written for you. These what ifs don't matter. And you don't have to think retrospectively about, like, what if I changed my choice? Everything's written. And hardship comes with ease. In the mal yusra yusra. And we're constantly told, like, to never look back at things and say, like, why me? Saying why me is literally against the entire concept of qadar. It's so powerful because, like, Islam is telling you not to self-pity yourself. That it's like, whatever happened, you gotta keep going. I don't think I really understood that benefit until I was reading these things about self-pity. I said, oh my God, like, if I took that Islamic perspective of qadar a little bit harder, I wouldn't feel the way I feel. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying, like, you can jump into it. When you're in that state, you constantly are in sync and you feel like you can't catch a break because everything is bad. I also think, on a, like, side note, I think bad energy attracts bad energy. And I'm gonna give a story. And the story is not to say, like, oh, this is, like, the epiphany of what I'm trying to say, but I think it's a cute little story to kind of tie it in. So I was a college freshman. I was taking a math class, and I was really bad at adjusting the first semester. Like, I was an all-A student. I was not an all-A student that semester. And I was slacking off. Honestly, I used to skate by in high school, and you can't do that in college until you know, like, the ropes. I failed a final. I was, like, sad and stressed because I virtually failed every single test in that class. And I was like, ooh, I don't know if I'm going to make a C or I'm going to fail because I got scholarships. Please don't let me fail, right? I was like, it's raining outside. I'm going to walk outside in the rain with no umbrella. A car drives past me and just splashes me with water. And I just, like, was like, oh my God. The world is against me. The world is against me. Whole time, like, I think it's the most hilarious story because I was like, am I a main character in a movie looking back? If I wasn't so in my head, per se, I could have saw that car coming. I also had a route that I could have walked that I would have been dried, that I would not have been covered in any rain. But I chose to walk that rain route to be dramatic. I'm not gonna lie. I literally chose that route to be like, I'm walking in rain and I'm sad. Like, people can't see my tears because I wasn't even crying like that. I did cry after, like, the car splashed me. But, y'all, I'm tough. I'm strong. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes bad energy, because you not asking for it. I hate that word. But you put yourself in situations that could really give you more bad energy because you already are self-wallowing in your pain. and you're giving yourself like, woe is me, guys, look, I'm walking in rain and it was such a hard test and it was raining, I got splashed by a car. And like when I used to tell that story in the beginning, it's because I wanted pity. But like, you know, alhamdulillah, passed that class. Don't know how, that was God. But I think that's like a great example for me that's like very playful, at least, to talk about, that sometimes your bad energy attracts bad energy. Sometimes that self-pity attracts worse things in my head. And you might be like, girl, you just made all of that up. You might be on to something. So I have so many situations in my life that I have tried to look at the bright side, and like things have tested my patience. I'm okay with that, and I will acknowledge that like that story is not the only version of like self-pity, and I constantly fall in self-pity. So I'm being better. I realize right now it's self-pity. So let's see if I be better at that. So let's go back. Now, I really want to think about like pop culture versus, I don't like the word pop culture, self-help. I've been saying like self-help, self-embetterment, wellness culture, wellness industry. Okay, the wellness industry. And when I say the wellness industry, I'm thinking self-help podcasts, self-help books, motivational speakers, all of it, anything that's trying to tell you to live your life. That's what I'm thinking about. To me, a lot of it has a lot of bad advice. And so there's an article called The Cure to Self-Pity on Psychology Today, and this is written by psychologists, right? It's like, oh, you know, you see everyone live perfect lives on social media, which I agree. Sometimes you see people living their best life, and it definitely gets you in like a self-pity cycle. It also talks about like how highly addictive self-pity is. I also agree. Self-pity is highly addictive because woe is me is the funnest thing to do. I'm not gonna lie. And it's like, oh, it's so easy to compare life to everything. But he talked about, the article author was like, I'm a psychologist, and people ask me like, how are you not burnt out from being a psychologist? And he's like, well, I love being inspired by every person who comes to me, right? I think the best way to get out of self-pity is just being inspired. And then he gives examples of like some of his patients. I'm not gonna lie, some of those examples, I don't understand. He didn't give us like how they got to where they are now or what they jumped over to get to that point. It was just like, yeah. I don't even want to say some of their stories because it was actually very inappropriate, I feel like, for him to put those things on there. But he was like, yeah, a young girl stopped harming herself. Be inspired. And I was like, this is insane. This is insane advice. And this is like the top advice that goes into like Googling how to stop self-pitying, right? And I hate the wellness industry for constantly pull yourself up by the bootstrap, which I'm gonna honestly tell you to do later on, which will be a little less than that. But just be like, oh my God, life is amazing. The world is great. Baby, like, if being inspired was a way to get past our issues, all of the entire industry would not exist. If he was my counselor or psychologist, I would be a bit concerned. So let's try another place, right? Another health article told us to say, recognize our feelings, refute those negative thoughts, cultivate gratitude, and engage in self-care as a way to get through self-pity. Because, you know, we worked this through. We figured out what self-pity is. So my question always like, what am I supposed to do? And I think it's better than what he said of just being inspired, but like recognizing our feelings. What does that really mean? Refuting those negative thoughts. Oh my God, you're such a horrible person. Don't listen to myself. Like, that's hard to do. I find myself all the time, and that's hard to do. Cultivate gratitude. I do think gratitude does help. I'm not great at it. And engage in self-care. I have opinions on self-care that I'm not going to share on here because I think self-care is a very overused term. And so I think like their whole thing is like build yourself out of self-pity. But to me, yes, build yourself out of self-pity, but this is something that's helpful to somebody who already chose to move past self-pity. Somebody who has already put in that first step, which is the hardest step of being like, I'm in self-pity, I need to stop self-pitying. Being willing to take some steps to build yourself up out of it. that's not the first step, in my opinion. So I don't look down on these methods. And if you can like get out of self-pity just from reading that and be like, bro, I'm about to do these things, more power to you. I wish I was like you. Now I kind of want to shift to just me yapping. I tried to make sure the first half was just like me bringing out examples, but now let's just have me and my own moment of self-pity. So like I said, I just feel like self-pity comes from a place of feeling like you have no control in life. That I would constantly feel like I don't have control of life. Everything is not something I chose. It's just the world doing things for me. I also think it really came from me minimizing my wins as well. So anything I did, it wasn't me. It was the world. I went to a good school for grad school. I don't even want to be like, oh, I went here for grad school, because I think that's part of the self-pity of like, oh, that wasn't me. I keep constantly make ideas of like, oh, it wasn't because I worked hard. It's because it was COVID and I didn't have to take like the test that gets you into that grad school. And I only applied because a friend was applying. And the department that I actually went to, I only applied because I missed the closing date of the department my friend got into. And so I'm being very vague about the school, right? And side note, I think I'm also vague because I'm icked out right now on social media how there's so many people who are like, I have a marketing degree from Harvard and this is why you should listen to me. I have a psychology degree from Yale and this is why you should listen to me. Like, girl, I've been through a state school. It was very surface level about how we talk about things, and it wasn't as innovative as a state school. Sorry for that like side note. But yeah, back to me. I just felt like I constantly took those wins that I got and I would minimize it to be everything around me did it and not that I did it. And I constantly took control away from myself within life. I definitely did grind. If I sat down and told you everything I did in school, you would be like, oh, you were a nerd for real. And I was, and I am. But I just feel like I didn't think that the work I did was something important. And I felt like, yeah, I worked hard, but everyone works hard. It was really just all these X, Y, and Z things that happened that got me to that place. And it really happened when I was in self-pity moments that I did that to myself. I could acknowledge, and sometimes, like I'm acknowledging now, like I did work very hard for that. I also applied to a lot of other schools and I got into those as well. So it wasn't like just a fluke. I clearly got into like a lot. Sorry. But yeah, and it's like whether I win or lose, it's because everything that's happening around me, you're constantly looking over your shoulder and being like, oh, people are doing better than me. And it's because they're smart, not because I'm smart. When I have the opposite, like the moments that I feel like I'm in the most control, the most power, and I just do crazy things, it works out really well for me like 20% of the time. But it's like amazing. Honestly, 80% of the time, it doesn't matter if it did or not because it's fun to do those crazy things. So at this point, you as a listener, you're probably like, so I'm a monster because I have self-pity. But like, you just told me that being inspired and being positive is like bullshit. I'm focusing on self-pity from a place of feeling like you don't have control of your life and then you feel bad because, woe was me, everything is out of my control. I'm not as smart as you. You were smart. You worked hard. I can't do that. When I work hard, I don't get anything. Although some wellness websites they kind of mix this idea of like self-hate, self-pity. I want to kind of talk about some of the tools I found online about what they talk about dealing with self-pity. Some good, some bad. So we talked about like how we had that inspire already, and then we had that other example that was kind of okay. So I want to talk about two versions that I thought were a lot better of how to deal with self-pity, and then like I'll throw in me. So there is a book that's called It Wasn't Your Fault, and I think it's about, yeah guys, I didn't really look fully into it, but I think it's about like self-compassion going through trauma. And so there's a Reddit post that literally talked about the difference between self-pity and compassion that came directly from that book, and I thought it was really good. Like they quoted it in a Reddit post and I was like, bet I'm gonna quote this too. It really talks about acknowledging yourself going through hard times with compassion and not whining about it or crying about it is so different from coming with pity. about it, right? It's not bitter when you talk about these things. You're not angry about the situation. You're hurt. That's fine. And you're trying to heal. And it talks about it again. You become victimized by this self-pity and become in a cycle. So it gives two different quotes of the difference. So right now we're trying to see ourselves. So self-pity is like, nobody likes me. I don't have any close friends. Guys, I will never get a man in life. Hey, don't clip this. But I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life. Crying like that. Well, self-compassion is like, I'm sad. I don't got no friends like that. I don't really got a man like that. I'm afraid, low-key, that maybe a man will never want me. And honestly, given my history, is like very understandable. I have that fear. Now I know. You're not gonna be like, you want me to say, it's so understandable I have this fear. And it's like, for me at least, I realize that saying like, you know what, it is what it is very similar to saying like, it's understandable that I have these feelings. So the author noted that feeling self-pity is bitter. It's like, poor me, it's spiraling. And when she started practicing this self-compassion, she felt sad and afraid, but she validated herself. And so that's one way, first identifying how you say self-pity and the difference between compassion towards yourself and then not compassion. So the Calm app. Okay, I will say shout out to Calm. Y'all can sponsor me. Shout out to Calm. Their website is phenomenal. They're one of the few websites, I will say, that has phenomenal insight on these different topics I've pulled up. Let's get into what the Calm app says. First off, they're like, let's identify if you have self-pity, which they did a great way because they did it in a how people look at you way and not internally. They said, 1, you constantly talk about your problems, constantly talk about your issues and not look for a solution. That was a red. Blame others. Frequently attribute your problems to external factors without taking responsibility. I'm sorry, I'm literally as I read this is what I was recording, writing this out. I was like, oh my God, I really did have self-pity. And if I had this checklist, I think I would have found out a lot longer. Seeking sympathy, often looking for others to feel sorry for you without trying to change your situation. Okay? Feeling like a victim. Now, let me say something before I read this. If you were listening to those 3 things and you were trying to give excuses to me, someone who's not in front of you right now, someone who you might be listening to or watching, feeling like a victim might be you. Believing you're always treated unfairly and your problems are worse than others. And then lastly, dwelling on your negative thoughts. Spending time thinking about your misfortunes, feeling unable to move through your life. Once again, life is hard. Of course you're going to have hardships, Hardships will ease. And I'm not trying to invalidate you, but I'm not going to validate you. Yeah, I'm not validating you. I'm sorry, guys. Y'all hear my personality come out sometimes, and I don't mean to do that. So the website also gives us what can you do to kind of do things to be better at that. Once again, working towards accepting your feelings, taking the understanding that accepting might not be easy. You can do it in different ways. You can write through the journal. You can talk with a close friend and just accept your process. I will also say recording, writing, making a video of you talking about your feelings help. Even taking from our just last example of trying to have self-compassion versus self-pity would be a great way of acceptance. They also talk about if you take 10 minutes a day to write out your feelings, the messier the better. This can help you identify patterns and track any progress in your mindset. Guys, I will say right now, I didn't start recording these things because I started having these feelings today. Baby, I had feelings years ago. And I got a notebook this thick of me writing things out. And I promise you, just outside of self-pity, you will start to see your patterns. You will start to see your patterns. Not people's patterns, your patterns. And be like, I gotta fix that about myself. It holds you accountable. 2, give yourself a gentle push. Sometimes you're stuck in a self-pity rut. It can be hard to figure out how to get out of it. Sometimes the easiest way is to stop feeling like a victim is to flip the script. We're not suggesting you ignore how you feel. Just try reframing it, how you're thinking, talking about yourself in your current situation. Now, one thing I'm going to say is, I keep saying this for like 2 weeks straight. When you change your perspective, miracles happen. Kevin Gates ate with that. He said, change your perspective, miracles happen. And it's really true. And I will say, like, it's hard to do that. I know that. I constantly try to reframe. And it helps sometimes. And I'm also saying, like, don't look at everything as positive all the time. Like, you know, you got hit by that car water. Like, you're not going to sit here and be like, oh my God, I'm so happy I got hit by the car and water. It's more like reframing and being like, okay, you know what? That really did suck. But you know what? Tomorrow's a new day. Next, catching yourself thinking negatively and pausing and saying something like, it's cool that I feel like this. I'm doing my best. I'm trying my best. And try to find like one positive thing you learned from the experience. I constantly do that. So I constantly tell people like stories that have happened to me recently in this year. This is something I started doing this year. And they're like looking at me and they're like, girl, that sounds horrible. And I was like, no, listen, guys. It was the qadr of Allah. God taught me this lesson. I know I'm not going to be treated like this again. I know I'm not going to be taught like this again. Like, I truly actually do appreciate a lot of my experiences because I'm like, this is a learning experience. I'm not doing this again. Do something small, even if it's small, okay? You got to take action. You got to, this could be like, it's like journal for yourself, write for yourself. Get out of bed and do your dishes. I'm not saying finish the whole dishes that's stinking and been sitting there for 2 weeks. It's okay, baby. I know some of us are like that. I know I had some days, never weeks, days like that. Just wash 2 dishes. Me, I do my laundry 2 pieces at a time sometimes. And it's okay. Because one day that laundry will be done. And then I'll have a new pile. Shift your self-talk to improve your moods. One way to burst out of self-pity is to find positives in current situation and change your self-talk. Y'all, I was just talking about this. I was talking about, yup, I learned a new perspective. Literally, it says, try this. I'm learning and growing, and I could always ask for help. I'm doing my best. I'm always learning. I just said that. I told y'all, everything is a learning perspective. This could go, y'all could not watch, and I'll take this as a learning perspective. I'll be like, dang. People don't like listen to me. Shake it off literally. Sometimes we hold tension in our body, and that's the only way to get it out is forcing it out. I will say the height of my self-pity, the first thing I did was I ran for a week, for 2 weeks. I ran for 3 weeks straight every single morning before I worked because I had so much stress happening and I also had self-pity, and it really did help. Okay. Was I the best at running? No. I was breathing hard, heavy. But I'm going to tell you, it helps. Find something that gives you a purpose or perspective, right? So this talks about join a local book club, running club, community garden, adding community service to your route. They're honestly eating up because some of these things were suggestions for my other episodes of how to get more involved inside your life. But being part of a community does make you have a sense of belonging and have self-confidence. It also, like, you have no obligations to any of these things that you join. If people hate the books you read or like your thoughts on the book, so be it. If you at the end of the line running, so be it. These people are not feeding you, taking care of you. They're not at your job. Like, it's places for you to kind of grow. Practice mindful meditation, dealing with negative thoughts. I would like to say they kind of slid that in, but they are apt for meditation. I'm not mad at it. They kind of right. Sometimes you need to recenter yourself when you're thinking very negatively. It talks about limiting social media if self-compassion makes you feel less than. They're like, if you're feeling bad because of social media, then limit it. And I think they really ate with that because, once again, social media is not the end all be all. Some of us are not really on social media. Some of us are not comparing our peers on social media. Replace pity with gratitude. They're like, okay, be happy. And they ate with this. They said, get out of your pity party is pushing yourself into a gratitude pool. I'm telling y'all right now, the intern communications lead, whoever wrote this, keep writing. Keep writing. I like you. They tell you to like pick a part of the day and practice gratitude and come up with gratitude for 5 different things. I've been trying to do that. Like I have a gratitude journal, and I will say I barely put it in. But when I do have a really bad like couple days and I start doing it, it really does pick my week up. Trying a new hobby that you can get passionate about. If you're just doing, I will preface this, if you're just doing a hobby because you feel like, oh, that will get me out of my rut, like, I will say I picked up a lot of hobbies during this year. I don't do a lot of them. But they're like, take that self-pity and channel it into pottery or a succulent or something. They're kind of right. Take some of that, like, bad energy and put it into something. Because you feel like you don't have control your hobby. Calm did a really great, like, list of different things you can do to get past the self-pity. Now I'm gonna kind of talk about destructiveness of self-pity again, and then what does self-pity look like on the outside sometimes as well. They gave us a great way to figure out if we have self-pity. I'm not gonna lie, I definitely probably have some victims of self-pity out there. I'm sorry, y'all. If I ever self-pitied my way on you, forgive me, please. I'm not like that, but I'm really positive and silly, like goofy, you know, I'm just a girl. Whatever little TikTok saying we're using right now, because I'm not on TikTok right now, that's me. So interestingly, I had this video like bookmarked, and it's from Stephen Fry, who is a British comedian and actor, on a BBC interview from 12 years ago. And I watched this towards the end of my video, and I was like, thank God I did not watch this while I was writing everything, because he said everything I was trying to say better, and I would have just like, you know, took a bite off of him and just wrote what he said. But I still think it's really good to be influenced by the things he's saying. So he says that self-pity is one of the most destructive things in the world. It's a sister to pride. And it's really interesting about that whole idea of pride being the other side of the coin, because a lot of Reddit posts talked about this idea of entitlement, the self-centered approach to your life. And the word pride was thrown out a lot of times. And people call it, so the woe is me is the beautiful hero who's going through hard times and he's just suffering and it's unjust to him. It's this whole idea of I'm a great person and why is this happening to me? The why me. He also talks about how destructive it is. It will destroy your relationships. It will destroy your life, everything around you. And, you know, that's what everything was saying. They were like, girl, you're going to be miserable because you're sitting in miserableness. And he even talks about, he's like, oh my God, Americans specifically, and how we love having self-pity. We love just sitting in self-pity, that we constantly say, what if this, what if that? I agree. And I thank God every day for making me Muslim so I could be re-centered. But we do live in a what if society. We constantly live in, what if you made this choice? How can you do better? You did this decision. What would happen if you made this decision? We have so many movies, everything telling us like, but what if you could be so great? And I really agree with him. He's like, stop being sorry for yourself. Like, you're not living the life that you keep what ifing. So what? It really takes me back to when I first went to Somaliland, Hargeisa. I saw people be so content with nothing. And it's not even in that like inspired. Maybe I was inspired. Maybe he a little was saying be inspired. But I was shocked, because I feel like we are constantly told like you want more. What if? We really do need to have a little more gratitude in life, because they are happier than I am. And I really realize a lot of people in the world are happier than us, because they don't have this like self-pity cycle of we're fighting against everything in the world. That's why y'all aren't happy, because y'all are waiting for the moment of happiness. This is just me now and talking about like where I came to all of this. I think we talked a lot about a lot of things. I know y'all tired of me. My first question to myself is always, who are you comparing yourself to? Like, my life is bad. According to what metrics? Is it that what if? Because if it's the what if, We established this right now. Stop what ifing. It's not gonna help you. Stephen Fry told you. I told you. It. So what? You're never gonna live that what if. All you're gonna be is the Lulu. If it's like, oh, I'm just not. You ain't shit. So what? Then what? You're not that huge idea you came up with. Because for me, I realized telling myself you ain't shit, then what, was one of the first steps that it took me to be at this place. I know I had a history of doing stuff. I did stuff. I work hard and I pushed myself because I thought that was important to me. Some of those things might not be important to me right now. And that's okay because I did it. I can't take back the effort I put in, right? I can't be mad at the end results not like meeting the things I was like envisioning in my head. I still benefited from the things I did. I still have those skills, those like understandings. I'm telling y'all, new perspective. When you change your perspective, miracle happened. But I really decided like I wanted to figure out these things because I wanted to. I took leaps of faith. I was passionate because I wanted to live the life I wanted to live. I wanted to be like, I'm gonna do it because I wanted. The reason I did public health, because I was supposed to be a doctor, was I told myself my parents were against it, bro. They were hating on me with public health. They might have been right, but guess what? It is what it is. But I was like, bro, I'm never gonna be happy if I'm constantly like taking their decisions, making them validate me, and I'm doing things for their validation, you know, because I'm just going to be in this cycle of self-pity. Oh, I can't change my major because that's what my daddy wants it to be. And it's like, girl, yes, you can. Change it. Then what? He gonna kick me out the house. Okay. But you made that decision. If you don't want to be kicked out the house, then make decisions to stay in the house. If you don't want to be like, stop giving people top power. Just choose your own decision. I'm sorry, that was so mean to people. Like, no, I validate you have these issues, you have these problems, and I agree. But sometimes I'm like very mean to myself, and it helps me. I'm an adult. I'm in my quarter midlife crisis right now, y'all. I'm going through my hardships. I'm literally reimagining and re-understanding my entire life in the way I think. And a lot of things that I expected my life to go towards didn't go that way. And I fell into self-pity real fast, real quick, because I realized like my life isn't what I want it to be. Personally, I didn't want to take responsibility. Real quick, because to me, taking responsibility felt like, and this is retrospective, this is off the dome right now, but taking responsibility felt like I was invalidating all of the work I put in. Felt like, and this might be different because once again, if you're in the stage of self-pity, you haven't done anything, it'll be very different from you hit a place of self-pity after trying to be like that tragic hero and doing everything right, and then not working out. And I think, like, side note, I know as Muslims, especially as women, the conversation of marriage is washed. It's so washed, but it's so overdone. We're tired. Look at me in my I think it's British slang, I don't know. You keep trying to make yourself a tragic hero. When I fell into it, I had to realize, like, for me personally, okay, I failed. I ain't shit. Then what? I keep saying I ain't shit. Then what? Y'all can hear me say that when you change your perspective. I ain't shit. That's the two things you're gonna hear me say all the time. And then, you know, in the Maru Yusra, like, I don't speak Arabic, so don't get mad if I slur my ayahs. I realize, like, I create these standards that I may never hit in my brain, and these vague standards, these vague goals might not necessarily make me happy, because I hit some of these goals. It didn't make me happy. I was still living the life that I live. And I know it's very broad to be like, okay, I'm like recentering what happiness means to me. Girl, I don't know the answer either. We're going through this journey together. Maybe later on we have the answer. But I know that I was at my happiest when I made choices, when I was okay with failing, because that was my choice. Ate with that. I walked away from my previous job. I'm literally jobless with a mic right now, y'all. I am jobless. We'll talk about that in another episode. I'm jobless with a mic. Okay? I've walked away from friendships. I've walked away from people wanting to get to know me because I knew those decisions weren't meant for me. I knew those decisions, I wouldn't be comfortable if I just took that decision. And so, guys, I'm going to close this by quoting myself. I talked about how I wrote for myself. I love to write when I'm mad. I've been doing it since I was 17. Anytime I had an issue, problem, whatever, I would literally go get my little notebook and I would Trina it up. If you don't get the reference, you didn't watch The Greatest Show of All Time. It's really not that great, but I used to Trina it up. So I used to be in there, writing, going crazy on it. And so recently I realized that I was self-pitying, and I didn't know it was the word self-pity until I started writing this episode. But before even having all this research, all of these things I talked about, this is like where I realized I was the problem. So let's start. I was so scared to be in the unknown. I've been living in this shit for a year and I keep acting like it could be worse, that I should accept it, like a binary. I even tried therapy and I realized from one thing, I've been putting people before me. Shit, my parents, my friends, the world, society, work. She said I was kind, but I think I was cruel. I put my troubles, my decisions on others. I was just as much as a coward as he was. Okay, ooh, poetry. Okay, sorry guys, for real. But I've been writing in this notebook for a very long time, so I think I'm a lot more like now. I think before, when I was younger, like whenever I pulled it out, I'd just be writing. But now I'm a little more like put together on my thought processes, and now it's just like a snippet of something I'm actually willing to share with the world. But yeah, like I was like, bro, I'm a cruel person to myself, to the people around me, because I realized that I was putting all of my word troubles, all my decisions onto others. Like my job was shit. And I was really trying to put my unhappiness onto others. My relationships with family members, with friends, sometimes weren't the best in the past couple months. And I was really putting it on others to solve those problems and like throwing it in their court of like, you have to solve this for me, not the other way around. And I was like, that's cruel to yourself. That's evil to the people around you. And so I think that clicked for me. That was me self-pitying. I was like, bro, I'm putting all the decision, all the power, everything on other people, and then I'm doing woe is me. Oh my God, my life is so bad. Of course it could be worse, but I'm living through a horrible time. And I kind of was just like, okay, I need to stop letting my self-pity, my woe is me, live my life, because nobody cares. Nobody cares. And I'm saying that I have had self-pity. I've had people come to me with self-pity. As someone who has been self-pity, anytime somebody comes to me with like their self-pity is a red flag, I run away, because I know I can't handle it, right? Because I know it's not beneficiary, because I put solutions in front of people all the time. I'm like, straight up, here's a solution. Do you just want to rant, or you want a solution? Here's the solution. And I know not everyone wants a solution. Sometimes we try to rant. And don't think you can't share your issues with people, because even after this time, I put a lot of things on the table after my self-pity, because I was like, like we talked about in the beginning, I kept all those petty things because I was scared of confrontation, and then it built up for me. And I put the things on the table of like, you know what, these things are not working out for me for a lot of different places. And I'm in a better place now. So thank you guys so much. Please mind, this is like my first video, so I'm hoping we'll get shit on the wall, girls. Like, I don't know what we gonna put up here, but it's gonna be cute. Yeah, it's gonna be cute. Maybe we like the podcast color. Maybe I'll put the little podcast anyway. Yeah, so if you have any topics you're interested in sharing or just insight, feel free to message me on my email, reach out. We can come up with an episode, because right now it's really just me in the kitchen cooking, and I would love to have more ideas of what I should be cooking in here. And if you feel like I was completely off about self-pity and your life is hard, I can't help you, because your life might be hard for real. And I pray every day that life gets easier for you, inshallah. And we're all human. We're all tired, bro. We're all tired. And we all can't handle everyone's problems. And sometimes we can't handle our own. Anyway, love y'all. Bye.